no one's come right out and asked me, Tim, why in the world would you have done something so absolutely weird?
There's a moment in the book early on where you write to Mr. Rogers. The line that always stands out is, something to the effect of, "Will you be proud of me?" And that is such a freaking scary thing to say. And I think, at least for me, as I read the book, I'm putting myself in your shoes. To me, that I don't know, there's a feeling in my body even now thinking about that. The idea of reaching out to, I think, anybody, but especially to me anyway, like another man or an older man, and asking if they would be proud of you feels like at once the most maybe central thing in our hearts, that's like something everybody really actually wants to ask. And then at the exact same time, something you should never say because it's scary and bad. And it seems to me like you putting yourself out there in that vulnerable way changed the course of your life forever. How did you come to that place? I mean, am I reading it right? Was that scary for you as a grown man to say, or did it just kind of come out? Was it natural? Are you built different? Is that the Minneapolis in you, or Minnesota?
You're the first person in all these years, maybe because other people are just we're being more polite.
I'm not good at it.
It's like no one's come right out and asked me, Tim, why in the world would you have done something so absolutely weird? But I think it's probably the polite thing, because it is weird as hell. And in the book, and it's also the book is now a play that's been produced at 5 different places around the country, and it's very, very good. And it's just, this whole thing it's very powerful and it's very timely. The story of my friendship with him, the lessons that he taught, the lessons from my own life are all very timely in what I think is a very difficult time in our history. But it was 1996, and I had met him about 6 months before on assignment. I was profiling him for my paper in Fort Worth, Texas. And, but when he gets to know you, he doesn't care who you are. It's like he wants to know you. You're not a reporter, you're a person. And he wants to know about what he called your essential invisibles. He wanted to know about what was really going on with you. And he had this very gentle but persistent way of trying, basically saying, tell me what's really going on.
Yeah, wow.
After about 6 months of corresponding, after that, the last day of my assignment, he walked me to my car through the rain and gave me a hug and said he was glad to be my friend for whatever reason. That's talk about weird stuff, but that probably qualifies too. But anyways, I figured, okay, Mr. Rogers wants to be my friend. And so I started to write to him. I started to send him, but that was prior to email. I'd write to him, send him stories I was proud of, and he'd always get right back to me. But this time in my life was also, perhaps not coincidentally, corresponded with a very difficult time in my life. We had some serious mental health issues, depression, being the chief one, but a lot of issues from my childhood, and one of them being, I always felt my dad was ashamed of me. And I tried really hard to try to earn his love and regard, but I always felt like I'd failed. And so in June, my letter to Fred was dated June 22nd, 1996. I basically said, well, okay, Fred, you want to know what's going on with me? Here it is. And so I told him about the depression, and I told him about this and that. And I said, at the heart of all these things, Fred, is this notion that I've tried all my life to get my father to be proud of me. And for whatever reason, I've never felt like I was successful. So I said, I have a question to ask you, Fred. Would you be proud of me? And for whatever reason, I folded up the paper, put it in an envelope, licked the stamp, and mailed it away. And in the play, and this corresponds pretty, it's the play is pretty close to what actually happened. But in the play, the Tim character is saying, reading this letter, very, very vulnerable and intense and emotional letter that he puts in this letter to Fred. And the actor who plays Tim is center stage and the spotlight on him. And, he says, "Would you be proud of me?" And then the next line is, "What was I thinking?" What could possibly possess a person to write something like that and send it? But the line is, as you so correctly said, is that all I know now is that I did write it, I did send it, and I wouldn't, we wouldn't be having this conversation had I not. It did change. It absolutely changed my life. And he responded in the, "Dear Tim, the answer to your question is yes, a resounding yes. I am proud of you. I have been proud of you, or I will be proud of you. I have been proud of you since first we met." And then he said, "I'm deeply touched that you would care to share so much of yourself with me and look forward to hearing all that you would care to share in the future." Which is another way of saying, as he's told me some other time, he said, "Your trust confirms my trustworthiness." And he loved it when people would trust him that way. And then he said, "Nothing you could tell me could change my yes for you. Your place in this life is unique, absolutely unique. Yes, Tim, yes, and then in dozens of scores of pieces of correspondence until he died in 2003, he almost always signed off IPOY. But I say in the book, it was a combination of inspiration or desperation. And I do believe that that's true because it is so unusual to be out there like that. And
did you feel scared at all?
Did I feel scared?
Yeah, after you hit send? Or did it just flow out of you? I mean, you didn't have to. I just think if I wrote that letter to you, if I said, "Will you be proud of me?" I would be like, like just waiting for the letter to come back.
That would be the natural reaction. That would be the typical reaction. But I don't remember even feeling scared about it. But one of the reasons why is that I trusted him so much.
Yeah, makes sense.
By that time, I'd gotten to know him well enough that he was a different kind of human being. That even if it was the most hideous, ridiculous, and some would say my request was hideous and ridiculous, but even the most hideous thing, he was going to respond with kindness. He wasn't going to shame me. He wasn't going to say, "Why would you write such a thing?" I knew that he would be kind, whatever it was. So I wasn't concerned about that. And I think that another piece of this, and again, it's been a long time. Another piece of it is I was so far up into my own shit that I just didn't care. And it just, whatever. So it was, but I enjoy this line of questioning because it's not something that I've ever really talked about before. But I think that there's a lesson, an important one. That this I do talk a lot about. I think we all got stuff going on.
Yeah,
we all got challenging, difficult things happening in our lives, and that when we can, and again. I think another thing is I think we've all got Fred Rogers types in our lives that who really want to know the truth about us. the warts and all, the messes and all. And you got to exercise some discernment, I think, when when you make yourself vulnerable that way. But I think that it's really, really important that you do. And because we all try to pretend, we're all such great actors to try to conceal from one another the messy parts. When Fred's deal was, the messy parts are not anything to be ashamed of. Those are the things that we have most in common with all other human beings. All other human beings suffer that way. I told this story in my own podcast a couple of days ago. The book was published in 2006, so it's been a big part of my life ever since. First it was his friendship, and then it was trying to share the lessons of that experience, because he was one of humanity's great human beings. And as when you have the opportunity to have that kind of relationship with a person like that, especially when you're a writer, you have an obligation to share it. So one of these visits was at a junior high in Tampa, Florida. And it was 10, 15 years ago now. And it was an inner city school. So about 1,000 junior high kids, most of them black and brown, pile into this gym. And this fat old white guy is going to come in and talk to him. Mm-hmm. And so I did. I told him the story of my friendship. I told him about the pain. I told him about the "I'm proud of you" letter. I told him about all these things. And they were just with me the whole way. One of the things.
Did they know who Mr. Rogers is, even still?
Well, I think then they probably knew who he was. Now it's like, to introduce Fred Rogers, you got to talk about Daniel the Tiger, because that is kind of the PBS thing that's kind of Fred's alter ego. But, it's different. It's different now when you're talking about Fred, because most people don't know who he is. At least younger people of a certain age obviously know who he is. But anyway, so I tell the story, and this fat old white guy's talking about how he was depressed, how he was in all his pain, and how he had this friend. And so at the end of the talk, I said, before I leave there, I got a secret to tell you. And you could kind of sense that they all just kind of leaned forward in their chairs.
I just started wanting to lean forward. There's a mic in front of my mouth.
Yeah, it's like, you're kind of nosy, Ryan. But I said, I got a secret to tell you. And here it is. I said, I'm a mess. And they start to clap. I mean, spontaneously start to clap. But I said, well, okay, wait a minute. Before you get too carried away, I got some other tidbit to lay on you. And he just kind of sits and leaning forward again. And I said, you're a mess too. Every last one of you are messes. And if anything, the second round of applause was louder than the first. And then I said, okay, well, you're a mess, I'm a mess. There's another word for mess. Anybody know what it is? And there's a little girl in the front row who said human.
Wow.
And I said, you're exactly right. I said, here's the best news. You're a mess, I'm a mess. But the good news is that we don't have to be messes alone. And they took the roof off this gym.
Wow.
And that is, I don't think that we give ourselves enough credit as human beings for how hard this is, how hard life can be, how difficult it can be to get out of bed in the morning some days. But that is, it's hard. But that's for everyone. And I just think that if we can allow ourselves to take a deep breath and, again, share the fact that, I don't know what it looks like on the outside, but on the inside, things are, I'm swimming pretty fast. And, just kind of be more honest with ourselves and with other people. I think there's a lot of healing in that. And to really torture this metaphor even further, it's like I'm standing here or I'm sitting here with you on this podcast and in a zillion other ways because I wrote a crazy letter to some other person saying, I'm really hurting. Would you be proud of me? And it was utterly life-changing. And I don't think that necessarily is anything so dramatic happens when we can do that, but I think that the principle is the same. There's a lot of healing. There's a lot of growth. There's a lot of peace. There's a lot of love that comes with doing something like that.
Well, I'm proud of you for sending that letter, because I think that was about the scariest thing you could do. And what's so cool is that because you did that, and maybe it didn't feel scary at the time. It didn't need to feel scary. It may have just been, but you were honest in a way that I think most of us have a very hard time being honest. And because you did that, not only did it change your life, but it's changed a lot of other people's lives as they've read your book and seen themselves in that. And I think it maybe challenges the reader to go, wait, well, why wouldn't I say that to somebody? And how many people came across Fred's path or anybody else's path, and then they didn't say something like that, because what we've tried to do, and is present ourselves as very accomplished people who have everything together.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
My brain just went into like three different paths. One was, if I'm throwing myself under the bus, I'm wearing a $225 shirt right now, from Nordstrom. Most of my shirts aren't that expensive, but this is probably my nicest shirt. I didn't consciously put it on to impress you or anybody else, but the act of even buying a shirt this ridiculously expensive is an act of trying to portray yourself to in a certain way to the world. I'll probably cut that part out. I don't know. Maybe I'll leave it. It's vulnerable. But
no, please leave it in. But continue. Now we're getting somewhere.
You rich son of a bitch. But I think one of the secrets of my life is I can't keep it together enough to fool people for long. So, you got the brunt of it this morning because all my cameras and stuff weren't working. And I got here like 5 minutes in advance. I should have been here 45 minutes in advance for you, but I was tired as hell because I stayed up too late editing podcasts, so that everybody would see that it came out on Wednesday morning, the day it's supposed to. But, we all live our lives in this way of trying to create an image of security to others so that people will trust you enough to do whatever it is whether it's to marry you or to hire you for a project. But underneath it all, like you said, we're all messes and we're hiding that from almost everybody. Another thing I thought, and this is probably less profound, but it is maybe relevant, is that one thing about your message is you sent it in a physical letter, correct?
Right, yes.
The problem with today, Tim, is that, as you know, because you use we've emailed back and forth, but like you send it in an email or more likely now in a text, you can see, you can go back. When you send in a letter, you kind of got to forget about it, I think, right? And like, what did I say? Mm-hmm. But now you go back and look at your email or you go back and look at your text, and then when you don't hear back, they got it instantly. So if you don't hear back within a day, you're like, I know it got to them. They're not reaching back for a reason. You might even see that they read the message, which, quick hack for the whole world, turn off your read receipts because that's hell. No one gets to see if I've read their message or not. I always want plausible deniability that maybe I haven't seen it. But anyway, so I might even see Tim read my message where I said, will you be proud of me? Why hasn't he replied? He read it. Is he not proud of me? Do I come off like a creep? 5 days later. And who knows, maybe you got really busy with a project and got 500 texts that day. But I'm sitting here this whole time going, what did I say? And I can keep going back to my message and being like, how did I write that? Wait, did he think this or that or whatever? And torture yourself.
I think it's an important point because it speaks to the time we're in right now. And I think that there is something, I still try to write personal notes at least once in a while. Yeah. And put them in an envelope and lick a stamp and mail them. Because I think it's meaningful. It's meaningful to me and it's meaningful to people more so than an email or a text. Yeah. But when you're exactly right. It's another source of anxiety for us, is that whether it's a deeply personal or vulnerable message you sent, or just a piece of business correspondence. I mean, we want to know right now what the answer is. And when we don't know, this starts happening.
Right.
And this is a big problem. This craziness in our heads are big problems. And I'm sure we have deeply meaningful exchanges on text, via text and email. Yeah. And I think that there's a positive aspect. I mean, Heath and I have been going back and forth, and Heath McClure, our mutual friend, have been going back and forth in very meaningful ways via text and email for more than a decade. But a little piece of the spirit is missing. I think that when you do it that way. Anyway, I like the way your mind works, because that's an issue. When you're vulnerable to another person in this era of instant communication and instant gratification, and how often has a person ever responded exactly the way you hope they would?
Right.
Probably not often.
Very few.
And so then you've got that whole thing to So I get what you're saying, and yes, I was weird as hell for sending that original message, but I hope that text, email, coffee, lunch, however you do it. Fred's deal was to invite people to come out of their isolation. And I hope that we can do that. I hope that we can have compassion for ourselves and realize that you don't be fooled. Even Ryan with that fancy shirt has got some stuff going on. So
I'm a mess.
You're a mess. Yeah.
Well, let's
figuratively taking the roof off my office.
Talk to me more about Mr. Rogers, because another thing I think that stands out in the book is, like, I found myself when I was reading it feeling like Mr. Rogers sounds a lot like Jesus. Like he comes off like really, how you think Jesus is supposed to be. Like, actually, let me tell you a story, and then maybe this will naturally dovetail. This weekend, I knew we were doing this interview, so I had it kind of in my mind, and I was listening to the audiobook to try to kind of remember your story and everything. And I went into a bathroom in Georgia in a Love's gas station, one of those big 20 stall kind of bathrooms. And as I was finishing my business, I hear in a stall, there's like a little voice, like maybe 4 years old, going, I can't do it. And I hear, presumably, I hope, the dad going, you can't what? Can't poop? Yeah. And now I'm going to get vulgar for a second so that I can convey to you what actually happened. I may bleep the words, I may not. Depends on your sensitivities. But anyway.
No, I would go for it, but go ahead.
Yeah. So he goes, what? You can't shit? You can't? He's like, no. Well, you better, because you're going to sit here until you do, because I pulled off at another, and he just gets more and more elevated. So, and the kid's not even fighting back, but he just elevates himself. And he's like, because I pulled off at another fucking rest stop for you so that we could fucking take a shit, and you're not going to poop right now? You don't know how to shit? Well, you better teach your little sphincter how to shit out of your ass till you fucking poop right. He's just to the whole bathroom. And there's another dude in there. There's some other kids. I don't know if these people all know each other or if they're strangers. My heart rate's elevated. I'm like, what should I be doing right now with this situation? Because this guy is a fucking asshole and needs to go down. But I'm not a big guy, and I'm not like trained in jiu-jitsu or anything. So there's only like a limited range of people who I could beat up. And he's behind a stall, so I can't see if he fits that class or not. But I'm like terrified for this kid. I'm thinking, I'm scared, and I'm outside of the situation. They're in this little 4-year-old is in this bathroom stall with his dad, I hope dad, being yelled at directly about his situation. He's got to be terrified. And so anyway, I ended up just kind of passive aggressively like saying out loud like Father of the Year award, and then I like got the hell out of there. And I was like, babe, let's go. And we like got out of the gas station. I'm like, a lot of people carry guns. A lot of people are big people, scary people. He may or may not be. But I mean, I felt like a coward that I'm not like, you know, what I wanted to do is like bang on that door, like, get the hell out here. And, you know, but also you don't want to interfere in a parent with their child. And there's just a lot to it. And so I walked out of the situation kind of wishing that, I'm like, man, I wish I carried a gun so I could have the balls to confront somebody. And then if they turned out to be Hulk Hogan and I could do something about it, maybe I need to do fight lessons or something. We'll see. But anyway, my point is, as I walked out, I was thinking about this whole Fred Rogers thing. And I was like, how would Mr. Rogers have handled that situation? And I kind of got a picture of it. I'm like, I don't think it would be how I did it. I don't think he would jump over and become a ninja. But I also don't think he would have been, you know, said something, you know, sarcastic and bailed. I almost pictured like the guy coming out and Mr. Rogers, you know, I feel like Fred could knock on the door and be like, excuse me, sir. Can I talk to you? Like, and would somehow be able to like navigate or de-escalate that situation. I don't know if I'm ascribing to him superhuman abilities he didn't have, but I'm like, I feel like Mr. Rogers could have de-escalated this situation and somehow not getting his ass beat. But in my head, if I did something, I was either going to die or accidentally kill this dad in front of his son. And so I just said something sarcastic and ran.
You were probably pretty close. Because here's the deal. With Fred Rogers, there was right and wrong. You know, there's some things that were some things are just wrong. But if he would have heard that, he would have said, he would have been appalled and heartbroken, and he would have done something. But it's what he would have done that kind of sets him apart.
Yes. Because
one of his defaults was when people were behaving that way, as wrong as it might have been, one of the things he would have thought about was, how was this man treated as a child? What has happened in his life and history that have caused him to act so inappropriately and cruel and just wrong? So his compassion would have extended to the man, not just to the kid. And what he would have done is like a version of what you would suggest. He would have knocked on the door and he would say, "Sir, you sound very upset. And is there something I can do? Or can we talk about this?" What he wouldn't have done, he wouldn't have come at it through the lens of anger or hate or judgment. He would have, he had this kind of, your Jesus comment. He often seemed that way. I kept waiting for him to kind of, in the 8 years we were friends, waiting for him to kind of betray a more recognizable human way of being, petty or judgmental or anything, but he never really did. He had his own, heartbreak and challenges, but he would have felt compassion for both people, both the kid and the man. And I think that when you come at a situation from that perspective, diffusing it happens much more easily. Because I think that the man probably would have sensed that this guy cared about him, that Fred cared about him too.
Wow. Yeah.
And I think that when you approach things that way, the outcomes are probably more constructive than if you engage in a way that this man was probably more familiar with. Because a guy like that, he's just looking for a fight.
Right.
He's just looking for someone to push back. And it's really unfortunate they had to do it with a little kid. That's just, It's reprehensible and inexcusable, and Fred would have thought the same. But what do you do about it? How do you approach it? And that was him. It wasn't an intellectual exercise for him. That's who he was. And he was very Jesus-like in that way. And in the New York Times review of the book back in 2006, the reviewer said, Tim Madigan comes very close to saying that Fred Rogers was like Jesus, and he said, I don't know what was stopping him, because he was. And that's why I think that I'm not the only one who feels that way, that he was one of our civilization's great human beings. And I had a very, after the Mr. Rogers thing, or the I'm proud of you letter, a couple of years later, I was in the middle of a very difficult personal situation that I was very ashamed about. And I wrote him another letter saying, here's what's going on. Could you be proud of me? And, it's in the book, and the book starts that way, but could you, and his reply was, Dear Tim, please know that I would never forsake you. I'd never stop loving you, that I'll always be proud of you. He said, if only we lived closer, I'd drive to your house and knock on your door, and when you answered, I would hug you tight. However inappropriate or wrong my behavior might have been, Fred knew that any person who was behaving that way had to have been in a tremendous amount of pain. And that in that moment, that's pretty much all he cared about. It was really quite remarkable. Our friend Heath and I have talked a lot about this over the years. How, that kind of a model, the world would be a much different place if more of us could be that way. And this has been a huge part of my life, and hopefully some of these things have rubbed off. I aspire to a lot of these things and always fall short, but I continue to aspire. And I just think his example is a really important one right now.
Yeah. There, as you were talking, I'm like, I could picture a movie in my head, where you watch the father in that bathroom stall, you watch how he grows up. Hell, it'd be a really good movie if you started with that scene and then flashed back to his childhood and watched everything that got there.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a good movie, because you'd start off like, that guy. And then as the movie went on and you see the little kid and whatever, and like, then it would tug your heartstrings, and they would get you on his side, and you'd see him surely abused by somebody along the line, probably his own dad, but maybe I'm just being stereotypical. But you could see a movie where he grows up and goes and works at the bank or whatever it is, and gets talked down to people, and you're still rooting on his side, and then see the terrible holiday journey they probably had, where who knows, it was the holiday weekend, so who knows, maybe grandma died, and like they're putting, and the kid pissed on the grave, and I don't know, like a lot of things could have happened. That one's probably not likely.
I just watched watched a series on HBO, Task, I think it was. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's really good with Mark Ruffalo, and it's kind of a cop thing, but every one of the characters are fully developed, and that is kind of the deal. All these people are behaving in certain ways, but you come to understand why they're behaving that way. So I think that narrative arc that you created is just kind of fundamental to a lot of great art, is trying to understand, what happens in human lives. And another one of my favorite Fredisms is, it's much easier to love someone when you know their story. And that became, another high point of this. My story was, shortly after that I'm proud of you letter, Fred wrote to me and he said, Tim, tell me about your dad. What was his childhood like? And I said, I don't know. So I started to ask, and what I learned completely broke my heart. It was a nightmare. But once I learned my father's story, it really changed everything. He had a really deep and realistic understanding of human nature, I think. I think he had a lot of compassion for people. Because it's like, if we never screamed at a kid in a bathroom stall before, we probably wanted to. We just, or we wanted to do shit like that. We wanted to throw the cutlery against the wall. We wanted to.
That's right. Yeah. I could never, to be clear, I could never see myself yelling at a child like that. I couldn't even see myself talking to that way to a grown adult. It would just be silly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I know I've imagined crazier shit. You know what I mean? Like, I've imagined all sorts of bad things. But just we keep it together.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So like it's all in there, and of course there's a series of events that could unfold in your life where all of a sudden those barriers fall down, and of course, who knows, maybe this dad may have had mental illness or all sorts of things. And I think there is a line where at some point you have to interject in there becomes somebody is being oppressive or violent or whatever, and they need to just be stopped, and we got to care about their story later. But I do think that there's a moment, and while they're still in the words place, there's a moment where somebody with like a godlike perspective could come in, and like I thought was profound about what you said about Fred is that, potentially, and we're guessing, right? But potentially he could come in and go, have compassion for a dad who would be in the situation enough to stop and be like, sir, like, can I help you? You seem to be upset. Like, is there something I could do for you in this moment? And, that's something that I was maybe, first of all, that thought didn't come to mind, but until like 30 minutes down the road.
Mm-hmm.
But to have the kind of courage to be that, I guess it's maybe almost like Gandhi-like, it feels Jesus-like, but to have the courage to speak to somebody who seems like they want to tear somebody's head off and then speak to them kindly, I do think there's a chance the situation could have been diffused, but my blood was boiling. And I don't know that I had the strength in that kind of a moment to do that.
And your reaction is understandable. And I'm sure that if Fred were in that situation, his adrenaline would have been pumping too. I think that it's important not to become naive or unrealistic about this too. I mean, intervention is absolutely necessary in some situations, and Fred knew right from wrong and all that stuff. It's just that he would come at things in a different way.
We had some technical difficulties, so excuse the fact that we're now starting in probably a completely different location that doesn't make sense with whatever you were just listening to. But anyway, so the way I came across your work was I had finished this album with a band called Dawson Hollow. The album's called Pixelated Haze. And we put Mr. Rogers quotes all throughout the album, which was just this cool little extra context around the songs. And it became a really big, kind of meaningful thing for us. So when the album was done, my wife recommended I give everybody in the band a copy of your book, I'm Proud of You. And I hadn't read it, but she was like, it's great. It's about Mr. Rogers. It's like perfect. And so we ordered all these books, and I wrote a little thank you note in each book and ended it with I'm proud of you. She got me my own copy, and she wrote a little note for me in it, and I ended up reading it, and it really caught me at like a great moment earlier in our marriage, and it was, just a very touching experience, the book itself. So anyway, I reached out to Dawson Hollow yesterday, and I said, I'm interviewing the guy who wrote the book I gave you. Do you have any questions for him? And one had a joke and one had a real question. So here's the joke question first. And I'm outing him right now. I'm sure he'd be mortified for me to really ask you the question. But he said something real dumb. He was like, ask if Mr. Rogers was a Secret Service agent, a secret Navy SEAL trained to take people out or something like that. Complete out of left field, but the only reason I'm bringing it up is because after our story in the bathroom, I was like,
Well, yeah, that raises a whole nother possibility of how Fred might have handled that situation. I get that there is an urban legend out there that Fred was a Navy SEAL.
Oh, really? So this wasn't completely out of nowhere. No,
it wasn't completely out of nowhere. Navy SEAL, that his body was covered in tattoos. and I as I said, one of the things he made me do, and when I'd go visit him, as we would go swimming, he swam every day, and he said, "Okay, Tim, it's time to go swimming." So we'd be in a locker room, and let's just say I was in a position to be able to say whether or not Fred had any tattoos, and he definitely did not. But no, it's not true. There was a Fred Rogers Navy SEAL who had a website or something like that, and the two got. So he was not a special forces sniper. He was not a Navy SEAL. I mean but that has been, the Mr. Rogers people spent a lot of time debunking that. So yeah, unfortunately, the answer to his question is no.
Okay. Well, that was a better answer. I thought that you were just going to be like, what the hell? So at least there's something to it. So well done, Kyle. And then Rachel asked, and she's they're a family band, so they're all 5 siblings. She's the sister. So she was asking about what you call in the book your furies, and just like how Mr. Roger helped you through depression.
And the larger answer is more complicated, and there is a Hollywood version of this answer. Where I met Fred Rogers, he said, "Tim, I'll be proud of you," and I went on to live happily ever after.
Roll credits.
That did not happen. It was really super important. It was a piece of the puzzle on the journey, but I had a lot of other Fred Rogers types in my life who were mentoring me and walking with me through the stuff that I was going through, which is really hard. The furies were just part of life. And he basically said, you don't have to be ashamed of it. We could talk about it. It's just part of being a human being. The first step is just to say they're normal. Everybody has them. Because you're going through a hard time doesn't mean there's necessarily anything wrong with you, or it doesn't make you a bad person. Yeah. Because I think that one of the things that happens, and this is a big piece of Fred's deal too, is one of the things that happens is it's not enough that we feel bad. That, we feel bad about feeling bad. We feel like we're weak. We feel like we're not strong enough Christian, or we feel like we're not man enough, blah, 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 on and on and on, rather than just saying, oh, here come the furies again. Shit happens.
Yeah.
And so, but he recognized that, and another thing he would say was, what is most personal is most universal, and the most universal stuff is the hard stuff. So he kind of, it took some of the pressure off. When you're having self-doubt, when you're anxious, when you're depressed, when you're sad, those things are enough. You don't have to add another layer of stuff on top of it. On top of it, and it makes a big difference. I also wrote a book, or helped a grief therapist with a book called "Getting Grief Right," and his practice was, and it was about grieving a loss through death. And his deal was, people would come into his office and say, it's been 2 years since Henry died, and I know that with the steps and stages of grief that I'm supposed to be better by now, but I'm not. And so Patrick O'Malley was this guy's name, and the first part of his practice, he would diagnose people based on the steps and stages of grief, and said, well, it's been a year and a half, you're not angry yet. It's been a year and a half, you're not in acceptance yet. And it just didn't work. So basically what he would say, people come in and say, my husband died 2 years ago, and I'm still really sad, or still really angry, or whatever it is. And, something's wrong with me. And Patrick would say, well, maybe there is, but let's put that to the side for right now. Tell me the story of your husband. So this person would start telling the story, and about all the things that they did in life. And at the end of this, Patrick would say, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just sad. And after everything you just told me, of course you're sad. And basically he said a lot of times they would never come back. once they realize that this was just part of life and that everybody grieves differently and that experience is different, and you can't use some sort of arbitrary timeline to, people just say, "Oh, thanks." But that's kind of the way life is. Fred says, you're in the middle of the Furies. Yeah, everybody goes through that. So just chill out a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think that is might be the most important piece of all of this is, if we all got it going on inside, and just, that's okay. Like we said, like I told those kids in that gymnasium, I'm a mess, you're a mess. Shit happens, but we don't have to be messes alone.
Yeah, I think it's obvious, it's very powerful. And like weirdly not, I guess, you catch that message from time to time from different sources. Some people have caught that message from you. There's also sorts of places that you might pick that up. But in another way, it's like not taught to us. I don't know. It feels like that's like a revelation you have to have as you get older. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And I think you're absolutely right. I think that we're somewhat more evolved in over the last 20 or 30 years about these sorts of things. But I still think we have a long way to go. And so these kinds of conversations, I think, are important. Whenever, I talk about it a lot on my own podcast, and whenever we have these conversations or in the book or in the play, people would go, "Oh, thank God." I thought I was the only one who felt that way.
Yeah.
Still. And so, I don't think we can say it too often, or that people just need to take a deep breath and be kind to themselves and realize, stuff's going to go on, and no, that is just part of being human. And I think that encourage people to, we all have Mr. Rogers in Mr. Rogers in our life, and I think that when we can become real with people who are, especially who are close to us and really want to know our deepest truths, when we can do that, we're paying that other person, a huge compliment, by saying essentially that I can trust you. And, we have many parts of this conversation have been super interesting for me, and have caused me to think about things that either I haven't thought about, or I haven't thought about it in a long time. But one of them was, were you nervous when you sent that letter? And for the first time, I could say, telling you, I wasn't nervous because I trusted him. Yeah. I knew that however he responded, it was going to be with kindness and thoughtfulness, and so. And again, we all have people like that we can really unburden ourselves, and we will know that it will be received in a humane and decent, kind and loving way.
Yeah,
we may be weird as shit, but they'll be nice to us anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like when I put myself in your shoes writing the letter, which I got to do because you wrote it in your book and you described doing it. So I got to be in your shoes as kind of the protagonist of the story. And that it scared me to death to put myself in your shoes. But if I pictured being in Fred's shoes and receiving that letter, I think, it could cause you to break down in tears that somebody would say that to you. And it makes perfect sense to me for me to go, if somebody said that to me, I'm like, oh my God, of course I'm proud of you. Like, wow, you know what I mean? And just what you said, I don't think I would say it so cool as he did and be like, you're trustworthy. The fact that you trust me confirms my trustworthiness. I don't think I'd have that kind of zinger ready. But I have felt that feeling when people have confided something into me that is scary, that's, as he said it, like an unmentionable, like if somebody says something to you that's usually unmentionable you do feel very honored that somebody would open up to you in that way. You know, another thing I was thinking was, as you were speaking, was some of these messages that we're talking about, I almost just feel like you have to be of a certain age to get it. Like you almost have to experience the bad side of not having it to get it. Because like I remember being a kid and I had Mr. Rogers on TV. I wasn't like a dedicated daily viewer, but like it was always kind of there. And, you know, at a certain age, you're like, Mr. Rogers is this big, sweet man. You know, I had these kinds of messages. I remember school assemblies where they, you know, kids, you can speak your feelings. But
Right. Yeah.
when I was 7, you know, it's like you're in a different world. And when I was 7 and through 17, I was like, I'm good. Life is good. I'm happy. There was plenty of bad things happening in my world. My parents got divorced in a very dramatic way. There's all sorts of craziness going on. But I was like, yeah, they're crazy, but I'm happy and having fun. I'm hanging out with my friends. I'm good. And it wasn't until I got to be 18, 19 that I started reflecting more on life in a different way, and then feeling some of those different feelings that I was sort of secure from as a kid. And then you look back on the divorce and what you were going through and all the things it's like I got to start experiencing some of the emotions that maybe I would have as a kid if I were an adult, but I wasn't. The message has to hit you when you're ready. I can hear at a school assembly, like, it's okay to be sad. And when I'm a little kid, I'm just like, cool, whatever. I'm not sad. But then I need to hear that as a grown-ass man. I need to be 38 and then have Tim Madigan say, like, it's okay to be sad. You don't also have to be mad at yourself for being sad, which is something you should understand as a kid. But it's just like, I'm like, I'm going to go play with Pogs. But now I'm like, wow, profound. And so sometimes you just have to like experience the shittiness of life being like, I'm sad and I'm mad that I'm sad and I'm angry that I'm mad that I'm sad. And, you know, I loved what you said. Like, it's hard enough to feel bad. You don't also need to like be angry at yourself, or anger isn't maybe necessarily where I would go, but more like depressed or like ashamed. Yeah. Ashamed that you would feel this way, as if like you're supposed to be this perfect person who's like unassailable by life and emotion. You know what I mean? Like, how dare I feel? I'm above this.
You know, Ryan, I have to say that you're much more than just an expensive shirt.
Thank you. Roll credits.
I just love the way you think, and you swear and do all kinds of cool stuff, and you're a musician. But you're coming up with these insights, you know. And I've been talking about this for a long time. And you're pointing out things today that I've either haven't been asked or haven't even thought about. But one of them is, how did Fred feel when he read that letter?
Yeah.
Even with everything that he had going on in his life, when he reads a letter from a young man that he's gotten to know who says that, it had to have been a powerful experience for him.
Yeah.
And so there's that, and I hadn't really drilled down into what he was actually thinking when he opened that thing. The other piece of it, what you just said, I think is really important. Okay, in grade school now, they said, okay, kids, your feelings are okay, or whatever they say. And it's like, and most reactions are going to go, what? Who gives it? Let's go to lunch. There you go. Let's go to reset. But there will come a time, one thing that is certain in every life, that there will come a time when you got your ass in a crack, when you're hurting. Life is a very good teacher. You know, life spares no one in that way. We're all in. And so when that time comes, maybe some of those lessons will, from the 7th grade or 5th grade or 3rd grade, it will sit. But you need to have them at hand. Or it'd be very good. You don't need to do anything, but it'd be very good to have that at hand, those at hand. Because the process of working through that stuff, that inevitable slings and arrows of life, I just think that, and I was talking to a group of college freshmen, who are in the middle of it, college freshmen, there's a lot of crap going on.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this, and I said, one of the reasons I like to do this is I would like to spare you a few of the hard lessons that I've had to learn. Because I didn't, Fred, that I came across Fred and other people, but I think that when you're going through stuff, these things are very useful, if not necessary. But you don't need them until you need them, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times, especially early in life, when we're so consumed with trying to get by and trying to get ahead and doing all this stuff, we're so distracted by life that then all of a sudden it catches up with us. Something happens. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's a lost job. Maybe it's blah, blah, blah. Something happens where it kind of turns the tables over, and you're left to look for resources that you didn't know you had. And so what do you do then? That's when friendship becomes the deal, important. That's when a bit of compassion for yourself becomes important. That becomes when you become a little more fluent in kind of what the real nature of being a human being is. Because it's just, we're all going to go through the furies. I just think the only question is, are we going to go through it? Or are we going to add layers and layers and layers on top of what's already there? And I think that's why these conversations are so important.
So with that, what are you, we've talked about the Mr. Rogers story a lot, and I definitely want to, again, encourage anybody to go read your book. We really haven't covered the depth of the story or the book. We're kind of dancing along the surface. So go read the actual book and get all that stuff. But now, 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line, however long it's been since 1996, what are the tools that you now, whether it's from Fred or somebody else, like you said, you've had many Mr. Rogers people in your life. What are the tools that you like to teach people now? If somebody had to boil it down, if they're like, how do I get through this hard time in my marriage or this hard time in my raising kids, or what do you encourage people to do? Is it dive into relationships? Is it mention the unmentionables, or like what are the, I don't know, like the maxims or Rogerisms or things that you kind of preach to people now to kind of like, hey, this is how I recommend getting through this? Or
I hesitate to be proscriptive.
Sure.
But because every life is different, but what has been important to me is community, support. I invest in my friendships, because they're much more richer that way. But there's great beauty and love and all that just for its own sake. But in the hard times, it's really important. I think it's really important to be quiet. I really think it's important to try to take some time as often as you can to just sit. And, I'm talking, I guess, in some form about meditation.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that, and I was guilty, and I'm guilty of this, and I will be until they plant me, but it's like running from the feelings inside, running from my, numbing out with bad TV or alcohol or work or whatever, when this, and rather than just sitting there and just, okay, what's going on? What am I feeling? What am I thinking about? And, a lot, somatics, I'm told, are a big deal, where going into your body and that, your mind is always going to lie to you, but whatever's going on in your body is true.
Mm.
uh, and just check in. Slow down long enough to kind of check in with yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that as a practice and over time is really important and useful, because over time, just by paying attention to your stuff, you tend to alleviate it. And over time, you know, it doesn't happen overnight, but in a year you kind of wake up and go, things seem a little different,
Mm.
a little lighter. I just think it's some sort of practice, where you take, or where you invest the same amount of time and concern with that part of your life as you do in the gym.
Mm.
Just to slow down, check in with yourself. A lot of times it's kind of ugly and nasty because this stuff comes up, but just let it be. And so community, solitude, and introspection and quiet. Because my goal in life is peace. It's not writing another book. It's not writing another play. It's not making this kind of money. It's like peace. You can kind of look out into a beautiful, winter day in Texas and go, it's really cool out here. It's really nice, rather than be tortured and rather than being, and, and so, and I'm a hell of a lot closer to that now than I was 30 years ago. To a significant extent, it's paid off for me because I'm peaceful and I'm grateful. That's the thing that's weirdest of all, is that how do I feel about my life? Just grateful. It's pretty simple as that. It's been a journey. It's been a process, and just be patient with yourself and do your best to check in with yourself as often as you can. And I think when you get to be an old bastard like me, things get to be pretty good.
One thing I thought when you said that about gratitude, you just want peace and to feel grateful for your life, like that's like one of the highest things to aspire to. Is I feel like I had that when I was a kid, pretty much. I might be like putting the hero's journey over my own life, but in a lot of ways, it feels very much like one of the missions in life becomes to come back to the sense of, peace and belonging you had as a child.
Mm-hmm.
I know not every child, speaking of our kid from earlier in the bathroom stall, not every kid is growing up with that, which is obviously a shame. But I think obviously, ideally a kid grows up kind of secure, feeling peaceful. And then it seems like once you are thrust into the real world, it's now the adventure of a lifetime to just get back to that sense of peace and gratitude in life. It's not obvious that everybody's going to get there. It's not automatic. And it's like, very often I think for many people, a war to get back to a feeling of peacefulness and gratitude for life. I'm very much, obviously, just like all of us, still in the thrust of that, of figuring out how to put aside the bullshit and the things that I'm worried about and the striving for greatness and trying to achieve this or that. And the whole world is now, and I'm guilty of the same thing, trying to build some sort of a platform on the internet and become known, and for why. And, I've had many conversations in this room with people where I just had one this last episode. We were like, who's going to care about your follower count when you're on your deathbed?
Right.
And it's like, no one except for like the most vapid of humans. Like that.
Yeah,
it would be the ultimate tragedy if you went to your deathbed proud of your 10 million followers.
I really, again, and I wouldn't belabor this, but I really love the way you think, because you got to be realistic too, right? There's a part of life, there's a time in life, especially when you're younger, you just churn, you just grind.
Yeah.
And for all the reasons that we grind, for money, for security, for ego, for whatever. I mean, that's just the way it is. But then as you get older, you think, you know what? I'm not sure that this has really been the point. What do I really want? I was within the last 6 months or so, I was driving in Colorado, my favorite place. And it was through the beautiful mountains, and it was a very rainy, kind of dramatic day. And I had the conscious thought that, I said to myself, or somebody said to me, Tim, this is it. This is what you've been looking for. This sense of peace, and that's very, very hard to describe. But you've written all these books, and you've written plays, and you've tried to be this guy, and you've tried to be that guy, and you want to be on the New York Times bestseller list, but this is all those years. This is what you've been looking for, and it was really kind of hit me with the force of revelation. And it lasted 10 minutes. But that's it. That's what I'm looking for. And when it happens, I recognize it, and I'm really damn grateful for it. But it doesn't come free. I mean, it's hard getting there, because life, as I said, life is a damn efficient teacher, and it'll find you. You're in the high percentile in terms of, at this point in your life, the things you think about, and how you approach it. I really love talking to you, and I've, as I said, you've been a blessing to me, and have really helped me today too. So I appreciate it very much.
Well, thank you, Tim. Yeah, it's been an awesome conversation. I think I would be remiss not to end on this. Will you be proud of me?
I will be proud of you. I am proud of you. I have been proud. I am proud of you, Ryan, and you're awesome.
Well, thank you, Tim. The feeling is totally mutual.